begin a series called Coding for People, and it's going to be a series focused towards anybody who's a beginner with programming. Alright, so in this class, again, it's going to be focused towards anybody who wants to learn how to program, and basically if you have little to no knowledge, and really all you know is the word coding or programming, then you will enjoy this course. This is focused towards you. So first I want to go over what coding actually is. Basically, coding is telling a computer what to do. So any program has to be written by a programmer. It has to be told exactly what the computer should be doing to actually have that program work. So here's my example here. When you open up a web browser, the web browser is actively telling the computer how to run the program. So the computer must know how to run the program, how big to make the window, for example, how to access the web, and everything else that the browser does. So once you open your browser, just launching that browser might be 1,000 lines of code. Let's talk about where coding and programming are actually used. So here are some examples of devices that do run code. Some of these might be obvious, some of these you might know, some of these you might not know. So your phone, computer, TV, remote control, your car, your thermostat, a smart light bulb, your refrigerator, and seriously anything else that you could even consider a device. Even like your key fob for your car. They all have to run code. Computer programming refers to writing any program that instructs the computer to do something. So we have these different languages. Just like in the real world, we have English, Spanish, Chinese, and so on. And each language has its own pros and cons, and that's why there are so many. But we're going to discuss this more in the future. So here are a few examples of languages you may have heard of. C or C++, Python, Java, Ruby, Swift, Go. Those are a lot of common languages, and we'll be going over a few of those in the future. So I'm going to give you a basic overview of the two main different types of languages. There's compiled languages, and that means that the code is read by a program and then converted into ones and zeros that then can be executed or ran. So like when you double click on a program. So as you probably know, computers can only understand ones and zeros, so the code that we write, which kind of looks like English sometimes, is actually being converted into those ones and zeros in a compiled language. Once you're done writing the code, you run the compiler, it compiles, and then you can just run that program as much as you want, unless you make changes. But again, we're going to get into this more in the future. Then the other type is an interpreted language. So this script will be read by a program called an interpreter, and it'll be translated to the computer as it runs. This might be line by line or certain blocks together, but the interpreter is always there whenever the code is ran. So this is why compiled languages are usually faster. There's another important thing that I want to go over quickly, and that's the level of language. So we have two different levels really. We have a high-level coding language, which is easier to read and easier to understand. And then we have a low-level coding language, which may be more difficult to read and understand. So the low refers to being closer to machine code, which is what the computer understands, so ones and zeros. And high refers to being further from machine code, so closer to English, for example. So I'm going to show you a few examples of code, and don't get nervous if you don't understand what you're looking at, because this is probably brand new to you, and we're not going to rush through any of this. We'll go over these programs more in depth in the future. So first I'm going to talk about the program, then I'm going to show you in words. So basically the program will ask the user for two numbers, so for example like 5 and 4, two integers specifically, so two whole numbers, let's say. Then it will add those numbers together and report the sum. So if I enter 5 and 4, it'll return 9, and if I enter 3 and 7, it'll return 10. If I enter 15 and 20, it'll return 35. So we're going to look at this in Python code. And Python is an interpreted language. It's a little slow, but it's very easy syntax. This is probably what we're going to go over first when we actually start writing code. But right now I just want to show you what this looks like. So here we only have about 11 lines of code, and we're going to ask the user for their numbers. We're going to save the inputs, and then we're going to add those two numbers and save it as a result. And then we're just going to print the result. So if this is totally foreign to you, that is completely fine. I just want to show you what code looks like. And now we're going to look at some C code. So C is a lower level language. It's a bit hard to understand, but I'm going to go through it so that it makes sense. So we're going to ignore this block first because that's a little foreign. We're going to ignore everything up here. Again, that's foreign. And here we're doing pretty much the same thing. We're asking the user for input. So we're saying enter two numbers to add each on their own line, which is the same thing that we did here, right? Now we take the user input a little differently, but it still works the same. And then we add them in pretty much the same way. The only difference is the semicolon, which we won't even worry about right now. And then it prints the result almost the same as it does here. And now I'm going to show you the ones and zeros that the computer understands. Now this is only 16 lines of about a 1,000 line file of this compiled binary. So when you run this through a compiler, you get code that looks like this, and it's about 1,000 lines long for this program specifically. It might be longer or shorter depending on your code. And this is what the computer understands. So I haven't met a single programmer who can read this and know what it's doing, but this is just me showing you what the binary actually looks like. So to wrap up, we went over the very basics of what coding is and what code looks like. And next time we're going to go over some basic coding concepts that you probably already know from everyday life and maybe past math classes. And I want to end with a programming meme. If you're interested, you can find these kinds of memes on the Programmer Humor subreddit. And here it says, people fearing AI takeover, and then AI. So of course, this is an example of AI. I'm sure you've heard of AI, artificial intelligence. And the joke is, it's doing a terrible job autofilling the names of the months. So of course, January and February, they both start with the same 3 letters that they're abbreviated with, and then they just have Uary after it. So the AI sees this and it thinks, oh, well, it's the same with all these other ones. So then you have Maruary, Apruary, Mayuary, and so on. So that's just a fun way to wrap up for us today. So I hope you enjoyed. Again, next time we're going to go over some basic coding concepts like variables, different data types, and this is stuff that you already know, so don't even worry. We're just going to introduce it in more of a coding way. So leave any questions you have for me down below. Thank you for watching, and be safe.